Friends, welcome to my workplace at Ranaghat, West Bengal, India. This is a cataract with past history of blunt trauma and mild phacodonesis. Let us observe this surgery. After making the main incision, 2% PMC is injected into the anterior chamber and it is applied over the corneal epithelium. And now a side port is made on the left side of the main incision at around 2 o'clock. Now, as I try to do rhexis with uterata forceps, see the wrinkling of the anterior capsule, which suggests a very weak zonule. Lot of zonular fibers have got torn by blunt trauma, but the remaining zonule is quite strong because it is a traumatic tear of zonular fibers. Whatever zonular fibers are remaining, they are quite strong. So I try to do rhexis after making the puncture with a sharp needle, and now see, as I come to 11 o'clock, as I come to 2 o'clock, I find that I'm causing too much pull on the zonular fibers. So I support the lens mass with the uterata forceps and then pull the capsule with the uterata forceps and do an adequate sized rhexis. Size of this rhexis is about 5 mm and it is okay. Cataract is soft. Hydrodissection is done, and I could not rotate the nucleus. Now my plan is to breach off this nucleus with this pre-chopper. This is Dr. Sohail Khan's pre-chopper. Could divide the nucleus nicely into 2 halves, but I could not rotate the nucleus. Now with bimanual approach by a Sinskey hook and my small chopper, I could rotate the nuclear mass. Inject some more visco, and then again I use the pre-chopper to divide these 2 heminuclei into smaller pieces. And it is possible to divide the one heminucleus into 2 pieces. The other heminucleus is not completely separated. Now I inject visco and I find that vitreous strands have come out through the left side port. So before going in with the phaco needle, I injected triamcinolone acetate and I found that vitreous strand is only at 2 o'clock and it has come out through the 2 o'clock side port. So my plan is to remove some vitreous strands before I go in with the phaco needle. So I'm using the cutter, 23 gauge cutter, through the 2 o'clock side port. Clearing the area where I'm going to use the phaco needle, phaco probe. Now I inject visco and then I use two hooks to lift up one piece of nucleus. Now I go in with the phaco probe and with 300 vacuum and 30 flow rate and 50% ultrasonic energy, I emulsify this nuclear piece. I come out, inject visco again, and now I'm going to use again the two hooks to get the other piece. Go through the right side port, and I could separate the piece, and I could lift up this piece. My plan is to use a CTR after removing this nuclear piece. So here I go again with the phaco needle, use a bit of ultrasonic energy and remove this nuclear piece. Since it was pre-chopped and elevated, brought out of the bag, it was possible to emulsify this piece. And now I'm going to apply this capsular tension ring. The leading end goes into the capsular bag, and then I very gently push the CTR, and then I use a Macpherson's forceps in my right hand and a Sinskey hook in my left hand to place this trailing end in the capsular bag. The two ends are at 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock. There's a small gap between the two ends, but doesn't matter. That area is, the zonule is okay in that area. Now with the help of a Sinskey hook, I lifted off the heminucleus, injected some visco around it, and then I'm going to remove this heminucleus using ultrasonic energy. 300 vacuum and 30 flow rate. This is Oakley Cataracts 3 phaco machine, and here I remove the lens matter, nucleus and epinucleus. But now the problem is there's a lot of cortex all around, and it is going to be very tough to remove this. I inject visco, and here I am showing only a part of the removal of this cortex. It took a very long time to remove all around. Total duration of this surgery was 33 minutes. So I'm editing it a lot to bring it to about 15 minutes. After removing the cortical matter, I fill up the capsular bag with visco and then implant a single piece monofocal intraocular lens in the capsular bag. Yes, the lens has gone in the capsular bag, And now remove a bit of visco, and now my plan is to inject a bit of triamcinolone acetate and see if there is any more vitreous strands or not. And I can see there are vitreous strands at the 2 o'clock sideboard. So I use the cutter again and go through the sideboard at 8 o'clock with the cutter. But as long as I am using the irrigation through the 2 o'clock sideboard, it is not possible to remove those vitreous strands that have come out through that sideboard. So I use the irrigation through the 8 o'clock sideboard and go through the main wound with the vitrectomy cutter and remove and cut the strands. Now I inject some air and I want to check if there is any more vitreous strands still there or not. And I find that still there are some more vitreous strands. Cutting these vitreous strands is necessary. With this Simcoe I could detect some more vitreous strands. To cut these vitreous strands, the irrigation has to be through the 8 o'clock sideboard, and I could cut these strands very well this time. So the vitreous strands from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock, those strands that were peeping through a zonular dehiscence in this area were nicely trimmed. And now I injected air, injected a bit of pilocarpine, and then exchanged the air with BSS. And now my plan is to inject moxifloxacin as the last step of the surgery. So I take this 27 gauge cannula and inject moxi into the corneal stroma. The wounds are nicely sealed, as well as some amount of moxi goes in, and this is the last step. Check the intraocular pressure and conclude the case. These are some post-op pictures after 1 week. Cornea is absolutely clear. Anterior chamber is quiet. Best corrected vision is 6/9. And see, the pupil is round and central. Intraocular pressure is 14 millimeter of mercury. This is the optic nerve head on 90 diopter with 90 diopter. This is the macula. With retroillumination, the intraocular lens looks like this. Thank you very much for your attention. Hope this video will help you in developing your surgical skills and inspire you to take up challenging cases in your practice.